All right, Rodney, I'm going to kick off and I'll continue to let folks in as they join. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to today's session, Why Companies Should Focus on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion with Rodney Johnson of Gallagher. First off, my name is Rachel Lieblein-Gerbala. I'm the programs manager at the Spencer Educational Foundation. My pronouns are she, her. And I wanted to first let you all know, for those of you who may be less familiar with the foundation, with Spencer and what we do, our mission is to fund the education of tomorrow's risk management and insurance leaders. And we do that through student scholarships, internship grants, and grants to universities to fund experiential learning opportunities, as well as course curriculum development. And we're really excited to be offering this summer webinar series for current students and recent grads. This is our 6th session of our 10-part series, and I hope you'll continue to join us, and thank you for coming today. I have a couple of housekeeping notes before we start with the main event. The first is that this session is currently being recorded, so you'll be able to access the information presented here after the fact on our website. The second piece is, again, I'm going to say this for those who haven't joined or who just joined recently. If I just typed in the chat, if you could introduce yourself, tell us your name, where you're calling in from, your organization or university. And then I'm curious, I wanted to add this additional question to get us in the spirit of our conversation today. So in the spirit of resource sharing, what is one book, article, podcast, or piece of art that has impacted how you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion? We did this once before in another webinar about a year ago, and it was really fun to get some resources going and share what's really impacted everyone in this room. So if you could just type that in the chat whenever you feel you'd like to. And then the last piece is that Rodney will be entertaining all questions at the end of his presentation. So you can feel free to write those in the chat as we go. And also at the end, if you'd like to share your question live, you can feel free to raise your hand. And when I call on you, you can unmute yourself, or feel free to just ask those questions and we'll read them out as well. And with that, it's time to introduce our presenter, Rodney Johnson. Rodney is the Divisional Vice President of Culture and Inclusion for Gallagher. He is responsible for partnering with Gallagher United States leaders to drive culture and inclusion programs across the US, as well as to support enterprise-wide initiatives. Rodney joined Gallagher in 2015 and prior was a regional vice president at Chubb, where he initiated Chubb's inaugural diverse business development program. Rodney has a bachelor's degree from Northern Illinois University and is also a licensed property and casualty insurance producer. And with that, Rodney, I'm so excited for your presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Rachel, first, I'd like to thank you and the Spencer Foundation for this opportunity to really discuss a very important and timely topic around diversity, equity, inclusion within the insurance industry. So thanks for all that you all do to support those efforts as well. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you're calling from. Thanks for making time out of your busy day to visit with us today and discuss this topic. As Rachel said, we'll leave some time towards the end for questions, but in the interim, shoot them in the chat box as well too. So we can jump to the agenda slide, Rachel. Thank you for that. Just really quickly, these are some of the topics we're going to hit on today. We'll talk a little bit about the business demographics around diversity. We'll talk about the minority buying power. We'll talk about the data around how diverse teams bring better outcome. And as you all know, there's a war for talent out there. Companies are really buying for you all, the next generation coming in the workforce, and there's some pretty interesting things the data tells us about what this new incoming generation is looking for. And then since we're in the insurance industry, we want to talk a little bit more about the financial risks of not having a diversity, equity, inclusion strategy, or really focusing on that. And then I'll share with you a little bit what Gallagher does internally as well to kind of give you some frame of reference. Next slide, please. Thanks, Rachel. So listen, the business demographics are shifting. The title speaks for itself. When we talk about diversity, we talk about it from a clear business case. This isn't about quotas. This isn't about affirmative action or some type of welfare program. You know, in 2016, you know, we had the opportunity to sit with our global CEO, Pat Gallagher, and really discuss why Gallagher should create our own diversity, equity, inclusion business division. You know, and when we had that meeting, we didn't talk about it from a philanthropic standpoint or some type of kumbaya proposition, but we talked about it as a needed business imperative, and we really started with this data that you're looking at here on the screen. So, you know, in our idea, if companies aren't keenly aware of this data and aren't working to proactively develop strategies to create alignment, you're going to be behind in connecting with this enormously growing growth engine. You know, so you know, especially when I was at Chubb, you'll see on the insurance carrier side, even on the brokerage side, there's a lot of companies that pay attention to different business segments that they want to align in to help their businesses grow. You know, you see them focus on areas like technology, advanced manufacturing, life science, biotech, all these different industries, because they believe they're growing industries and they want to align their businesses with them. But what the data will tell you is that diverse businesses are actually the fastest growing segment when you compare them to the other industries. They're just outpacing that growth. So when you look at things like, you know, women-owned businesses, they represent 42% of all businesses. You know, there's 4 million minority-owned businesses. And then when you look at the diverse businesses altogether, they're really outpacing the growth of non-minority business. So this presents, you know, one of the extremely strong business cases why companies really need to start focusing more on diversity. Because when you look at that data, those are our new trading partners. Those are the next Microsoft, the next Facebook, the next Oracle. The list goes on. And so it's important that we start trading with these partners, developing our strategies to align there. And important for you all coming into the business segment to be thinking about these things too. Next slide, please. So minority buying power on the rise. Now, this is something, if you think about it, the consumer marketplaces, you know, companies have figured this out, you know, a long time ago. You know, just think about, you know, the commercials you see on TV and the advertisement you see from companies. There's a ton of diverse representation in those commercials, ethnically, sexual, you name it. They're hitting just about every demographic. The product placement around diverse TV program. And then you think about when you go to the, you know, I know we don't do in-person buying often anymore, but when you're dealing with folks, you see a lot of the frontline salespeople are diverse. That's done intentionally, so they can connect better with the marketplace. So when you see corporations, you know, we saw a lot of them over the past year coming out making statements around social justice and making very strong statements against things like the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter. You know, I always say it isn't because the corporations are all of a sudden just becoming socially woke. It's because they don't want to jeopardize the trillions of dollars that these diverse contribute to their bottom line. So when you look at this, you know, you look at what the U.S. 14.8 trillion in buying power for the U.S. and you break that down and you look at that, what those minority groups are contributing, it's a pretty staggering number. And when you look at all those numbers and you roll them up, the group is spending power is larger than the GDP of Australia. So again, these are things corporations need to understand, and again, supports why there is a business imperative around diversity, equity, inclusion. You go to slide 6, please. So diverse teams bringing better outcomes. You know, listen, a lot of times, as you all may or may not know, companies hire people, they promote people, they connect with people and bring them in that typically look like them. They have similar backgrounds, same education, same life and personal experience, golfs at the same country club, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it seems obvious, but when you think about innovation, when you don't have people that are bringing different perspectives, different opinions, and really challenging the status quo, you can't really innovate, because you know, if everybody's thinking along the same path and only has the same perspective, you're going to get the same outcomes. So when you look at each of these bubbles and you look at, you know, increased creativity and innovation, you know, all the data around this will tell you, again, that diverse teams bring more thought leadership and innovation. When you look at problem solving, you know, we know that, you know, the data will tell you, again, diverse teams create business efficiencies, and diverse teams, based on the data, outperform non-diverse teams. You know, a couple of examples I'll give you from some folks in the clothing industry. I'll leave the names out, but this just goes to show you about why it's important for diversity from a problem-solving standpoint. You had one major clothing company that had an article of clothing that was out that they were promoting that was actually, they didn't realize it, but it was promoting a belief that has resulted in mass genocide of indigenous people and really served to normalize oppression, right? There was another company, another clothing company, that put a black child in an advertisement with the monkey in the jungle hoodie, right? And so most would argue that if you had some diverse people in that room that had different perspective, right, different viewpoints, different life experience, you may have averted that crisis, right? Just by interjecting some different perspectives and different thoughts. But you got a bunch of people in the boardroom on that had the same life experience, had the same thoughts, and they're like, hey, this is great, right? But in turn, by doing that, you know, it was a PR nightmare for those companies, and they lost millions of dollars, right? And so these, again, are things people want to think about. You know, increased profit, right? We know this is extremely important. There's a recent McKinsey study that found that gender and ethnic diversity has provided a 45% increase in performance. So again, I always stick with the data, right? This isn't about Rodney Johnson's opinion. This is factual data based on studies that have been shown. You know, higher employment engagement is another area, right? You know, we'll talk about this a little bit more on the war for talent in one of the upcoming slides. But listen, companies are always out there talking about, hey, we want to attract diverse talent. But they don't think about what it takes to retain that diverse talent, right? And we know that there's a new generation in the workplace that's expecting diversity. So what we know is that when you create a culture that embraces diversity, you're going to have a lot less turnover. And you're going to save your company in recruiting costs. So again, this is about the business, right? It costs companies a lot of money when employees turn over, and because of that investment. But creating that culture, that strong culture that welcomes everybody, is another important aspect of employee engagement, retention, and again supports the business need. You know, a better reputation. You know, one of the things I'll share with you from the Gallagher side, we're seeing way more companies within RFPs that they send over to us, wanting to know what we're doing around diversity, equity, inclusion. We're seeing more diverse decision makers within some of these majority companies saying, hey, you know, what are you doing for diversity, equity, inclusion? And also, I want to see some representation of some people that look like me and other people within my company. And so we're seeing more prospective employers wanting to know about, you know, about the diversity, culture, and inclusion strategy and what we're doing. And that is very much fitting in the company's reputation of how they're able to acquire new business. So again, that business reputation is extremely important. You think about the Fortune 100 space, the Fortune 500 space. Many of those corporations are doing supplier diversity or have some type of diversity, equity, inclusion program. and they're going to want to know what you're doing around supplier diversity, and what, you know, they're going to want to make sure that there's cultural connectivity with organizations as a part of doing business. We see it all the time. Winning the war for talent. Attracting and retaining skilled workers has rarely been as challenging as it is now. 69% of U.S. companies are reporting talent shortages. That's the highest in more than a decade, right? And so I meant to skip slides too. So slide 7. I'm sorry. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, attracting and retaining talent is an enormous challenge for organizations. So just to give you, there was a Korn Ferry report that found that by 2030, there'll be more than 85 million jobs that could go unfilled because there just simply aren't enough skilled people to take the jobs. What they're saying is if this is left unchecked or focused on, by the time 2030 comes, the talent shortage could actually result in about 8.5 trillion in unrealized annual revenues, right? So real dollars to these companies. Now, you couple that with making sure you have an environment that attracts top talent. Diversity with your organization will really be critical for that new generation entering the workplace. So while there's currently, I think the number's right around 44 million baby boomers who are still working. So you're like, hey, that's a good number. There's a ton of baby boomers, but they're actually retiring. 10,000 baby boomers are retiring each week. And so that's a big shift. And so, based on that shift in demographics, it's really transforming the workplace. And so they're saying from 2017 to 2027, the U.S. will face a shortage of about 8.2 million workers, and that's the most substantial percentage basis in the last 50 years that we're falling short. So, again, this is a serious threat for many companies right now. And so when you look at this pie chart, Generation Z represents really the leading edge of the country's change in racial and ethnic makeup. So when you look at, you see a bare majority of 52% are non-Hispanic in that first bubble, non-Hispanic white. That's significantly smaller than the share of millennials who are non-Hispanic white in 2002. That was 61%, right? So now you're looking at, from the Gen Zers perspective, 1 in 4 Gen Zers are Hispanic, 14% are Black, 6% are Asian, and 5% are some other race are 2. And so when you look at this pie chart, the ethnic diversity of Gen Zers continues to grow. So here's what I tell companies when I talk to them. If I'm a recent grad, because what we're telling folks is, diversity is going to be a deciding factor on new employees entering the workforce, right? So if I'm newly out of college and I have 3 offers from the top insurance brokers, right? Pay is the same, benefits are the same, role is the same, upward mobility relatively the same. I'm looking at culture. That's going to be. I'm looking at what they're doing from a diversity standpoint that aligns with me and who I come from. And this isn't just to say the people that are diversity, right? So here's what I want to make clear. This isn't just saying that the people that are in these diverse categories are looking for diversity. This is saying that entire generation is looking for diversity, right? And so if companies aren't focusing and have a clear offering and saying what they're doing to, again, enhance the experience of people entering the workforce and showing some connection to culture and diversity and inclusion, they're going to lose that talent. If all things are equal, I'm going to choose the company that I feel has the best connection to culture, diversity, and all those things that are important. So again, this is a business risk for companies. This isn't just let's do this because it makes people feel good, right? So next slide, please. So obviously being in the insurance industry, we got to talk about the financial risk of diversity, right? And again, this isn't just in another bucket outside of business. This is what many companies are dealing with right now. In our roles, we've gotten so much outreach, especially over the past year, of companies really trying to figure this out for myriad of reasons, from claims, from losing talent, to trying to bring in more talent, and just really trying to figure this out. So, obviously we are in the insurance industry. There's a strong financial risk for clients who do not have a formal D&I strategy. And I always say, listen, as consultants in this business, Gallagher, we talk about we're consultants. It's our responsibility to bring this exposure to the forefront. I've seen the industry do it with cyber liability. Think about all the emerging cyber threats that have been out there in the news, and big companies, governments getting the attacks. I've seen the industry, put their super person cape on when it came to COVID-related expertise and really helping our clients navigate through those challenging times. But we don't really talk about diversity-related exposures and how to solve that for our clients. So for you on the phone, I would challenge you to say, challenge you all to make sure that you're focusing on helping clients with these exposures, and I guarantee it'll help you out with your competition. So a couple things. Why are discrimination claims on the rise? Bottom line is more people are much more aware of them. You think about in the late 2010s, American news outlets reported discrimination cases at a pretty extremely high rate. So, back in 2017, the New York Times reported probably about more than 1,600 stories with discrimination somewhere in the title, while the Washington Post reported about 2,000 such stories. Now, obviously, people who read these stories become more aware. They know that these things are going on. They're understanding the employment discrimination claims, as well as the repercussions for employers found guilty of illegally discriminating. Additionally, it's also commonplace, as you all may or may not know, being relatively new in the workforce, but oftentimes companies provide employees with training courses around discrimination and harassment. So, with folks being more knowledgeable, in turn, it really increases the chances that an employee will file a discrimination claim. The other piece is you have increased publicizing of these incidents, right? So, think about an employee that, filed a discrimination claim, let's say back in the early 1990s. The employer's family might know, their friends might hear about it. The lawyer that they hired is involved, but really few others outside of that circle would be aware of the claim, right? So today, an employee can, only has alleged, right? Only has alleged discrimination on social media, and a significant portion of the country, possibly the world, can become aware of it. Just by searching the right hashtag. Social media users can also encounter people who they've never met that have had similar experiences or same workplace issues. So again, this is building a momentum of people really understanding. The other piece is the retaliation aspect of the claims. And we know that these are dramatically increasing. And so, just to give you an example, a supervisor of 2 employees assigns a more advanced task to a more experienced of the 2 employees. And as a result, that less experienced employee believes, you know what, I think, they didn't assign this work to me because I'm a female, or the color of my skin, or my sexual orientation, whatever you fill in the box. This employee goes to complain to human resources. now making that problem known within the company, and the management team is aware of that. So let's say soon after, that employee supervisor who's overseeing another project that requires little to no coworker contact, but also less experience. And so what they do is they assign the less experienced employee to this work, which happens to be that person that's in that, discriminate, you fill in the blank what diverse category they fit in. So this employee's like, I just got demoted. Now they're saying, hey, because I made this complaint, I got demoted in retaliation for complaining to human resources. And there you have it. Now they're filing an employment discrimination claim against the employer to the EEOC. So again, as insurance professionals, it is our duty to make sure we're talking to our clients about, again, I related, it's no different than when you're talking about loss control and safety, right? You're helping them with that. You're talking to them about, what not to do, to help prevent claims. You're helping them with cyber related, processes and procedures and things that it's the same thing here. And so we have to be emboldened to make this part of the conversation as well. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit about what Gallagher is doing and some of our U.S. priorities, right? And so, one of the things we have is a global U.S. and regional I&D teams task force, right? And what we think is great about this. So you have myself. I'm in a diversity, equity, inclusion role. We have a global I&D leader. We obviously have our HR functions globally across the organization. And so we have that group working on a lot of different diversity, equity, inclusion policies, procedures, implementations, best practices, trainings, and things of that nature. What's so great about these task forces is that, one, they're indigenous to the respective territories that they're in. They're all across the country, actually all across the world. When we're looking at, we have different task force, but the great thing about them is that you have these different task force that are really working on our efforts from the ground up. So while I say it's great at the corporate level and while we'll try and help create structure, but the actual implementation, the strategy, the buy-in is actually happening at the local level. And so what we found by taking this approach is that it creates a lot more engagement, right? It isn't just top corporate folks saying, hey, these are the diversity initiatives, we want you to do it. These task forces are made up of employees that are in the branches, that are in these cities, and they are working to execute. So what we believe that does is that creates more ownership. And through that ownership, that creates more buy-in. And through that buy-in, you find that folks are taking things and they're running with them, and it doesn't become, I always say, we don't want diversity, equity, inclusion to become a hashtag moment. So we want these things to be organic and live throughout our organization. So these task forces have really helped us do that to make sure our efforts live and breathe through the branches. Gallagher Connect Partners, I'll actually talk about in the next slide. But that's an area where we're partnering with other companies, diverse organizations, because we believe, again, diverse teams bring better outcomes for our clients. And again, this is about the business, it's about being client-centric. Working with the early talent management team and working a couple things, right? Oftentimes when people talk about recruiting diversity, they talk about doing it at the entry level, right? And that's important. I mean, new folks are the lifeblood of our industry, of our business, and so that's important. But also, it's important to say, how do we also look at our leadership, and how do we hire diverse leadership, right? I was a new person in the insurance industry a really long time ago. But one of the things I thought about was, when I first got in the industry, who looks like me at a senior level? Because I want to aspire to get there. fortunately for me, there wasn't many. There was one that I saw, and I was like, okay, that's okay. I'll work with that. But oftentimes, we know these scenarios happen where diverse people come in organizations and they see nobody that looks like them or represent them from a leadership team. So when something doesn't necessarily go well, they don't get the promotion they wanted. You name it. Folks are like, I'm not going to stick around for this. This company doesn't value people that look like me and think like me, so why am I going to stick around? So again, it's important that we not just approach diversity and recruiting from an internal perspective, but also to aggressively look at it from a leadership standpoint too. Build and identify strategic partners. That's another extremely important aspect of it for us, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on some upcoming slides too. And really developing marketing strategies, around the diverse business. So we talked about those. We talked about in some of the earlier slides the enormous minority business growth. So how do we develop our marketing? How do we develop, our strategy? How do we build trusted relationships so that we can start growing with these minority-owned businesses, and then continue to build external awareness through all the stuff we do. Having calls like this with you all today is a way that we, try and create some awareness on what we're doing. So next slide, please. So this is Gallagher Connect Partners, and I referenced this on the slide before. And so this is our formal proactive partnership where we partner with minority, women, and other diverse certified partners all across the country that we believe in some form or fashion can help us to better serve our clients. So we have some partners that are consultants like we are in risk management. We have some that do loss control and safety. We have some that are experts in things like cyber liability. We have some that specialize in diversity, equity, inclusion consulting, right? But all businesses that have a great culture, are very knowledgeable and have their own expertise and intellectual capital, ethical, everything you name it, and they're really an extension of our organization. We share our resources, we share our technology, we share our intellectual capital. In many instances, even where we're not partnering with them, right? Because we're also concerned about the growth of minority and women-owned insurance businesses just in general. And so we believe this is truly a rising tide raises all ships proposition and makes the industry better. So through these partnerships, we're able to not only help our clients improve their risk profile, right? But we're also able to help them, if it's needed, in supplier diversity spend. As you all may or may not know, companies are spending billions of dollars in supplier diversity spend. Many of the Fortune 500 companies are on a $1 billion roundtable of spending with minority and women and other diverse companies every year. Oftentimes, insurance isn't thought about in that spend. And so, and what many companies will tell you is that they're having a hard time meeting or growing their diverse spend. There's instances where companies are getting acquired, so they don't have the minority or women diverse designation. So we believe, offering this insurance perspective where we're bringing in these diverse businesses and these co-broker scenarios is adding some tremendous value for our clients, and really meeting the needs and really connecting with their business, not just from the financial aspect, but also aligning with them as well culturally. So we kicked this off in 2018 with 25 partners. We've grown it to 60 partners, and we continue to grow the platform and continue to find more businesses that have really valued this partnership that we put together. Next slide, please. So really quickly, this is a quick look at Gallagher's I&D strategies and everything that we're doing. And I won't go through all of these, but I think a couple things I'll say is, I'll start off with the CEO action pledge. Our CEO, our global CEO, Pat Gallagher, signed the CEO action pledge a number of years, and I'll say, there was a lot of CEOs jumping to sign this when we had the racial unrest, and Pat had actually signed this a number of years prior to all the craziness and social unrest that we saw last year. And so, I always say it's important to have people like me in these roles within the organization, right, to go out and try and build strategy, to build infrastructure, to build support and to build community. But quite honestly, if the CEO isn't standing behind what I'm saying and saying this is important from a business perspective, this is important to our organization, nobody cares what I have to say. And so I say anytime you're looking at any company and you're trying to evaluate who they are, what they're about from a diversity, equity, inclusion, I don't care what the person from HR says to you. I don't care what the one of the woman leaders tells you. I don't care what the person of color leader tells you. You need to see what does the CEO of that organization think about diversity, equity, inclusion, how important it is to them for their organization. Because if it's not important, oftentimes, it's not going to reverberate throughout the entire organization. So that's a pretty important thing. So when we were in our roles, having Pat have signed that really gave us a great amount of support and upswell throughout the organization, because other leaders understood that it's important to him as well. But you can see a lot of the other organizations that we partner with. But again, we don't do this from a check the box standpoint. We really look at a few things. Culture, community. These things are important to us. Talent, and so we're really looking for things that are going to support those three pillars, right? So is it helping us impact the community and touch the community, right? Is it helping us from a diverse talent standpoint? Is it helping us from a cultural and business standpoint? And so when you see a lot of these partnerships here, they're not just check the box. There's some real rigor and thought and strategy put behind where we are and who we're looking to touch and where we work. We work in many of our partnerships. It isn't just about cutting a check every year. You'll see us meeting with a lot of these organizations throughout the year. Talking about our strategies, trying to move things forward, and really make an impact. So, we find that many of these partnerships really align with our core values and a lot of our diverse business strategies. Next slide, please. Oh, wow, here we are. So, let me know, first of all, thank you all for your time, but let me know any questions you might have. Rachel, if you got any in the chat box that you want me to hit on, let me know.
I don't have any in the chat yet, but folks, please feel free to write them in now. And also you can raise your hand and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question that way as well. I'll give you all a minute. While folks are thinking, Rodney, I do have one question for you. I haven't had the opportunity to think for this long of a period about DE&I as a business imperative. So in this lens that you're framing this as, right? And that's so important. And I'm curious about your perspective on, I don't necessarily have a specific question, but the idea of how do we turn framing DE&I as a business imperative into true ideological change within an organization and within the people themselves that work for that organization. How have you found sort of that to connect?
No, that's an excellent question. And so, what I like to talk to people about is, I think oftentimes when people hear about diversity, equity, inclusion, they automatically think about the woman. They automatically think about, you know, sexual orientation, the person of color, ethnic diversity. They all think about these things, and the people that don't hit those boxes are like, this ain't for me. I'm not part of this. You know, this isn't gonna help me. This is, you know, and sometimes not really important to the business. And so what I like to tell people, and I used this phrase earlier, but I believe it in this instance as well too. Diversity, equity, inclusion is a rising tide raises all ships proposition. Meaning, if diversity, equity, inclusion is done right, everybody benefits. You don't have to check a diversity box for that. So, Rodney, what do you mean by that? Well, I mean, so if we believe that diverse teams bring better thought leadership and intellectual capital, if we believe all the diversity data that I shared about, you know, minority and women-owned company growth, the buying power, more minority women in decision-making roles within corporations, and we believe all the stuff about the talent, you know, the important with the war on talent. What you're going to find is companies that are really truly trying to grow from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint, you're going to win in that business. You're going to win that business. You're going to win that talent. And so what happens when that happens? Well, you drive more business. You get more customers, right? Organic growth. You drive more customers. You get more revenue, right? You get more revenue. You know, if you're a publicly traded company, Wall Street likes that a lot, right? That's good. And when Wall Street likes it a lot, your stock price goes up. You know, when your stock price goes up, people's 401ks get better, your benefits get better. You know, people get raises. You hire people, so you have a less workload. So I can go on and on about the benefits, right? And those benefits don't say, Rodney Johnson, you just get those because you're black. Or Rachel, you just don't get that because you're a woman, right? You know, everybody eats off of that, right? Everybody is able to benefit from that. So, you know, I guess changing that ideology has to be helping people understand why this is a rising tide raises all ships proposition, and everybody benefits from an inclusive culture.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was great. We have a question from Lauren in the chat. Can you give some client examples of ways Gallagher Connect Partners was utilized to help enhance one of Gallagher's clients' business? Does Gallagher DE&I Consulting Group usually work with the client as well?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I got to think about a great example because we, you know, I guess it sounds like I'm bragging. I'm trying not to brag. I mean, we really have some great examples. I think a couple things, right? I think one thing is that what's great about our companies, right, is that especially many of them are small businesses, right? So they've been able to take water and make it into wine, right? And I mean that, you know, obviously is you know, being a little bit facetious, but they don't have the global resources that we have. So a lot of times they're giving us ideas on how to come up with solutions where we build efficiencies in how we do things, right? Not to deliver anything less from the client, but they're really understanding how to utilize their resources. But I'll tell you, you know, some great examples. I mean, we have a partner that does cyber-related services, right? So while we do a lot of placement of cyber coverages, and we have a great cyber liability team, they provide a lot of the loss prevention services for cyber that really help our clients become better risk. So we're bringing them in. So we're not only coming in and saying, hey, we can help you with your coverage, right? And place it and get the best terms and conditions. But also, we're going to bring in this particular partner that is also going to help you from a loss prevention standpoint, make you a better risk, We're going to save you more money that way. And you can either buy more coverage with that, or you can just take the savings and put it in your pocket. But that's one way. Our diversity, equity, inclusion consultants have been phenomenal, right? And so when you look at Gallagher, and what's great about this, while some of our partners' skill sets overlap with ours, we don't have any internal diversity, equity, inclusion consultants, right? Folks that are accredited and have degrees in this. So we bring a completely different framework to the discussion when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, right? And talking about EPL and D&O claims. We're talking about how to build your culture, how to create a roadmap, right? How to create, we're using them on how to create that roadmap, but also, evaluating where your cultural competencies are now to really understand, the steps that you need to take from a priority standpoint. So, and we custom fit it to the organization, right? It isn't an off-the-shelf, one-size-fits-all. So we're bringing a completely different dynamic, quite honestly, that probably hasn't been done formally like this. And I didn't talk much about the DEI consulting team, but it's basically a consortium of top consultants we brought in from three consultants that we brought in to really form this consortium. Some of the top DE&I consultants. And so they bring a great amount of similar expertise, but they also have some ancillary things that they do aside from each other that really combine. I say it kind of makes them the super friends of diversity, equity, inclusion consultants. So those are the things we're trying to do. They're bringing in unique solutions, things that we don't necessarily do in-house. Again, I said it from the beginning, bringing better outcomes for the clients. That's what this all is about. It is about bringing a woman just bringing a woman for a woman's sake, or a person of color, or you name it. It's about the client. It's about the business. A great question.
Great question. Thanks, Lauren. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or write it in the chat.
I have a question. Sorry. I had a question. So you mentioned earlier, like, how, when you first started your career, like people at the, more diverse people at the top, to look up to, and there wasn't as many, like diverse people at the, in leadership positions. Do you, in Gallagher, do you guys offer any, leadership training programs or mentorship opportunities for the people, an associate level to kind of grow, and, would it be women or people of color, or, to kind of build themselves up and then, into leadership positions? Because I agree. And I noticed that, there's not as much as of a diverse group up the ladder in the, in the leadership position.
No, great question. And I'm what I will tell you is that that is a high priority for Gallagher to, now it's informally, it's being done. But what I'll tell you is we're taking steps to make some really formal processes in place. We're finding mentors, right, for talent that's coming in the organization. But not just stopping at mentors, right? I always look at mentors as somebody you can talk to on a day-to-day basis. You're having some issues with your direct report. You're trying to figure out how to handle a client situation. But also, and that's important, right? But also what we're talking about is, on top of that, is how do we create sponsorship programs, right? And sponsorships are just as important, if not more important. I'll say just as important as the mentorship, right? And sponsorship's a little bit different, right? It's the person that's saying, and I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Oh, David. You can just, yeah, David. Yeah.
David. So it's David. It's somebody, when there's an opportunity that's coming in within the organization, there's somebody that is highly respected in the organization, that has some cachet and some clout, that says, listen, I've been around David. This is who we need to have in this particular position. or this is who we need to give this opportunity to, or this is somebody we need to bring on the team, right? So it's important. But I'll also tell you two things, right? And this is what I had to learn in my career as well, too. And in every aspect, right? So a couple things. One is I'll tell you is don't wait on the organization to find you a mentor, right? Don't wait on the organization to find you somebody you can tap into, because, you need to do that yourself. You can do that yourself. And finding people in positions that you believe you want to be in, that have, experience, that have expertise, that has cachet. But here's what I also tell you. Your mentor doesn't have to be a person, if you're diverse, it doesn't have to be a person that fits in X diverse category. It's important to have those mentors and sponsors like that. But I also tell you, some of the best mentorship I received were people that didn't look like me, that didn't have a similar background, because I needed to learn what they learned within the organization and how they got to where they were based on a lot of things that I didn't understand. And so that were really not close to me culturally, right? That I couldn't really identify. So I think that's an important aspect. You can do these things on your own, even if your organization doesn't have that. That being said, Gallagher is definitely working towards that in a more formal way.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
We have time for another question or two. If anyone has any, feel free. I'm curious, Rodney, you mentioned, when you're looking for your next role or a position, to really look at that CEO level to determine if that company is a place that you want to work. And I'm curious if you have any other sort of tips for really truly identifying what a company's culture is before you commit to working there. Oh, Rodney, I don't think we can hear you now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There we go.
Excellent. Sorry about that. So Rachel, great question. I mean, listen, I think, in today's day and age, you can find everything online, right? You can find so much about the company, going on their website, seeing, what they're doing from a diversity standpoint. I mean, you can find tons of stuff there. You can also, Google the CEO, find out what type of, oftentimes you'll find out what type of philanthropic organizations they're a part of. You'll find out, Google their name and put diversity behind it. I mean, there's tons of ways you all can find different things out like that just by doing some simple research. But listen, I would tell you all, when you're in the interview process, I would implore you to do this. Whoever you're interviewing with, ask the question. Ask the question and see what type of answer they give you. See if they stutter, and they're not clear. See if they're, see if they have, see if they have some semblance of an idea of what they're doing around that. But I think, a couple things it'll tell you is that it'll give you a good feel for what that organization is doing. And listen, and I don't mean to say that, listen, if you were to interview here at Gallagher, would I tell you that every person, leader in Gallagher, is able to recite everything that Gallagher is doing from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint? I mean, listen, no, you would, and that doesn't make him a bad person either. Just, it takes time, right, to have something like this reverberate through an organization where everybody can, recite and make sure that we're staying on the same, that we're speaking from the same chapter and verse on this. But those are some suggestions that I would give for that.
Awesome, thank you. Any final questions before we wrap up? And Rodney, not to put you on the spot, but going back to our initial question in the chat, what's a book, an article, a piece of art that has really impacted you in terms of thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, either from the business standpoint or just personally?
Yeah, so no, this is a good one that I've recently read, and the author's going to escape me right now, but Leading Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, a guide for substantial change in multinational organizations. Just a great book, a quick read. I'm all about the quick reads, right? Trying to soak up as much information as I can. You're not reading anything. It's not like reading the Bible or anything like that. But yeah, quick read, quick study, some really great nuggets, and really leave you with just some really profound things that you can take away from that are applicable in the workplace.
Awesome, thank you. What a great recommendation. I feel like that's a really great way to close out. Oh, Megan, is that the book that you just popped in the chat? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Rodney, is that the one you were talking about? I was trying to just find it. Not that everyone has to go out and buy it, but just give everybody a link.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
Right. Awesome, thank you. Well, great. Rodney, I really want to give a huge thank you from all of us at Spencer for taking the time to join us and share your expertise on this really important topic. Thank you for being here. I really, really thank you. And I want to just quickly, before we close out, give a shout out for 2 upcoming events that I hope everyone on the call will consider joining us for. The first being our next week's webinar as a part of our series. It's entitled State of the Specialty Insurance Marketplace. The speaker will be Paul Smith, who's the Corporate Senior Vice President at H.W. Kaufman Group. So I hope you'll join us next Thursday at 1 Eastern time for that. And the second event I wanted to mention is that on Tuesday, August 3rd at 1 p.m. Eastern time, Spencer will be hosting a virtual roundtable discussion on finding your place in risk management and insurance with our Funding Their Future honorees, Peter Garvey of Galway Insurance Holdings and Mary Roth of RIMS, the Risk and Insurance Management Society. So Peter and Mary, along with Spencer's staff and a couple of Spencer Scholarship recipients, will come together in a nice roundtable chat to talk about why risk management and insurance is such an attractive career path and how to foster a really fulfilling career in the industry. So I hope you'll join us for that conversation, and we'll have a Q&A as well in that event. And with that, I would just want to thank you all again for joining us, and one more thank you to Rodney for being here and for sharing your presentation today. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day.